and that we have John Fitzpatrick on with us as well. I see you, and you are our next presenter. I'm not sure how much of an introduction I should make because I don't want to impose on any of your time, but I appreciate Dr. Hanadi and all the work that has gone into organizing the session. So thank you. Thank you to all the great presentations in that session. Following up on that, our next session is AI-powered business models, disrupting industries and driving growth. And I believe that, John, you have quite a bit of time to share your story and your presentation with us, and we'll follow up with questions when you're finished.
That's right. Thank you very much, Monica. In fact, I have a co-presenter who is stuck in the attendees column. Would it be possible to promote Sunit Bhatt to a panelist so that we can start our joint presentation? Would that be okay?
I think that's something Hanadi has to do.
That is something that Hanadi and her
Yeah. Hanadi, can you, I don't know if you're...
Yes, Professor Mike is already we promoted.
Okay. Can you add that person?
Yes.
Yes, it's there.
There you go, I'm in.
Oh, very good. Thank you, Hanadi.
Hi, Professor Mike, how are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Just I'm taking peace with myself for a while.
You can do that. You're entitled to it, Hanadi.
No problem, Professor Mike.
Okay, so at that, we will hand it off to you to co-present and listen to what you are ready to share with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. John Mark, let me, shall I take the intro?
Yes, please. Thanks, Sunit.
Absolutely, Ben. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much. And Dr. Hanadi, thank you for inviting us to participate and share some of our expertise. As we researched and looked, at sort of the panelists and the purpose of the event and also our background, we wanted to try and make this a bit more interactive and relevant, I think, to everybody on the call. And so we hope you give us some space and grace as we work our way through this effort to make this a little bit just more about participation. And self-reflection and a bit of self-work as well, some space that we often in the busyness of the day don't typically get. John and I we are peers in a community of expert facilitators on something called EOS, which is the Entrepreneurial Operating System. And that is a set of simple concepts, practical tools used by more than 275,000 companies around the world to clarify, simplify, and achieve their vision. Now, typically, an introductory presentation, an overview or facilitation session at a minimum is 90 minutes, but typically about a day. So what we've decided to do is take the most important tool from that experience and bring that to this audience. And one of the reasons we wanted to do that is because independent of your role, whether you are a CEO, whether you are an executive director, whether you lead an organization or a team, or honestly, whether you are just an individual looking for the opportunity to think a little bit harder about your vision, which is how do you get people 100% aligned and on the same page about what you're trying to do, about traction, which is how do you operate against that vision with discipline and accountability, and then healthy, which is how do you do that in a way that is just a little bit more fun-loving and a little bit more energizing, because the truth is, we all know that isn't always the case when we're operating with the rigor that we need to. And so Jen and I thought we would bring that to you, work through that exercise. It'll take about 30 to 40 minutes, and it'll be some self-work. We've got a document we'll share with you. John, if you can pop that, cut and paste the link in to the chat. What we'll do is we've created a Google document of this thing called the Vision Traction Organizer. And John will share that link. It's a Google Doc. You can make a copy of it for yourself, and then you'll be able to edit, enter, and sort of run with that and keep that as an asset exiting this discussion and conversation we have. As John is doing all of the amazing work that he does, he's given me the stage to lead with an intro. So the first thing I thought we would do is just our own introductions, our stories. Why are we here? why are we relevant to this conversation? And why are we, in a sense, why are we credible to lead folks through this exercise? So I'll start with my story. I will then hand it over to John Mark. John Mark, not John, is very important. John Mark. I'll hand it over to John Mark, who will take you through the first part of the organizer. So my story, in 2019, a company where I was board chair invited me on to be president. They had just lost their largest customer. They were struggling to make payroll. Times were tough. Now, that is a challenge that I have sort of faced for 25 years. I'd helped companies through sort of these times of tough transition, and wouldn't you know it, before we could absorb that punch, COVID hit, and we lost another 35% of our customers overnight. And as a result of that, I leaned in. We focused on discipline. We focused on accountability. We focused on execution. We tried to transform this business. And the question for me, after 25 years of helping organizations through that exact moment, was, why is this always so hard? Focused on discipline, accountability, execution. We went from why us, right, curses, to wow us. We 10x the business, 6x headcount. That transformation took about 3 years. It also took about 10 years off of my life. And it brought me back to that question, why is this so hard? Around the same time, I was an executive coach for a company in a similar position. And I watched them implement this system that we're going to talk to you to show you a small piece of today. And I watched them inflect their business, but in such a healthy and sustainable way that it almost felt unfair. And when they gave me a copy of the book Traction, which was written by the CEO, the founder of EOS, it felt like magic. It felt like I'd just gotten the words to a song that I loved, but had been singing wrong the whole time. And look, grit, hustle, those are possible when it comes to turning a business around and building a great business, but they are also exhausting. And so I'm excited to bring EOS to more entrepreneurs and organizations because I want to help you build an organization that is healthy, sustainable, and successful. And it doesn't have to be exhausting. With that, I'll turn it over to John Mark.
Fantastic, Sunil. Thank you so much. Poetry. So my story is as follows. I set up my company 13 years ago. And just before that, me and two partners, we decided that we wanted to leave the corporate world, become entrepreneurs, and try our hand at starting a company. And so what happened was we left the big ad agency where we were working and decided to create our own. And we had some fantastic success over the first 10 years. We worked with great clients like Google, Lego, Renault, PepsiCo, really big names. And we did some fantastic projects. But we got to a point where we started to get at each other's throats. We were really falling out, like really kind of not liking each other. We'd kind of forgotten to make money as well, which was the main point. Our profit margins were terrible, and we had no clear vision where we wanted to go in the future. So I went out, did some research, and I found a book also by Gino Wickman, the creator of EOS. The book that I found was called Rocket Fuel. And that was the first book that I found that showed me that I didn't have to be in a role that I didn't love and that I wasn't really great at. And so I did that, read that first book, and then I read Traction as well, like Sunil's. And I realized that there were people out there in this world called EOS implementers, like me and Sunil are now. And I hired one, brought one into the business. We turned the business around. We grew by 3 times over the next 2 years. And most important of all, my partners and I are still friends. So I wanted to, my plan now is to bring that tremendous value that I got to as many people as I can, to as many entrepreneurs and leadership teams as possible. So that's my story. Sunil, should we move on to the
Yeah, let's go for it, John. Why don't you pick up the vision part of the VTO?
Absolutely. So let me share the screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Can, yes.
Fantastic. Right, we've made the introductions. And so what the tool is that we want to talk about, it's something called the Vision Traction Organizer, or the VTO for short. And what this does, it really helps get your vision down onto a piece of paper. And we do this exercise with leadership teams. And yes, the questions and the material and the content and the answers here are really, really important. But when we do this exercise, the magic, in fact, is not in these questions. It is, in fact, in the alignment you get around having the leadership team and 3 to 7 people that it might be in that leadership team answering all these questions. And it's the job of an EOS implementer, in fact, to facilitate getting one answer from the whole team. And so in order to create this vision and plan to get there, we use this Vision Traction Organizer, and it's made up of 8 questions. And the 8 questions are as follows. What are your core values? What's your core focus? What's your 10-year target? What's your marketing strategy? What's your 3-year picture? What's your 1-year plan? What are your rocks? And what are your issues list? If there's any terms here that you haven't heard before, when we get to that specific area, we'll go into detail and explain what this all means. But you have these 2 pages, and one is the vision, and the traction are the concrete steps to get you to that vision. And so often, companies fall down and enterprises fall down and projects get scuppered when you make a fantastic plan and a fantastic vision, everyone's really inspired, but you don't get a plan in place, or you don't have the tools to really get you there and get you executing on it day in, day out. So that's what the magic is behind this Vision Traction Organizer. So let's go through the 8 questions. I'll start with core values. What are your core values? So core values are just an essential set of guiding characteristics that define who you are at the core and what you want from the culture of your organization. And so when I work together with my clients, I take them through a discovery exercise to help them discover the true core values of their unique organization. And then down the road, I explain to them exactly how they use those core values to really attract great people to the organization, people that fit the culture, people that you really want to be surrounded with and fit the culture like a glove. Also, what this does is it helps you repel people who aren't a great fit for your culture. And so that's core values. Next question is core focus. So core focus is really the sweet spot of your organization. And we find that sweet spot by getting answers to 2 questions. What's your purpose and what's your niche? This core focus has been called a million things in the history of business. And a lot of people call it a vision statement. Some people call it a mission statement. I think Stephen Covey calls it voice. Jim Collins calls it the hedgehog concept. And what we call it, another term for you, is the core focus. It's important because it comes from your core, right? And what we do, we use answers to these 2 questions. So purpose is, it's the purpose of your business outside making money, outside doing the thing you do. Why does this company exist? And then the niche is what you do day in, day out for your customers or for your clients. And then the yin and the yang, the mixture of those 2, they are the core focus. And so once it's clearly defined and articulated, the trick is to stay laser focused within that core focus so that you're always working within your sweet spot. And the importance of this comes from the fact that entrepreneurs, when they think they can do one thing well, they think they can do everything well. So they start to get distracted and they start to chase shiny things. So we always encourage them to stay within their core focus. And so the next question is the 10-year target. And if I can, I'd like to get some interactivity and ask you to have a go at this down the road. So what is your 10-year target? This is a big goal for your organization. It's the #1 business goal. So if you could sacrifice everything else you hope for in your business, what's the most important thing that you want to be true of your business somewhere around 10 years from now? Now, full disclosure, the time frame, it's up to you, right? It can be anything between 5 and 30 years. Most of our clients choose about 10 years, and so that's why we call it a 10-year target. But actually, if we can, I'd like to turn this into a bit of a workshop right now and help you spend a couple of minutes thinking time, really crystallizing what the #1 business goal or business goal for your project or goal for your organization or perhaps personal goal is. So step 1, I want you to figure out the time frame, right? And if we can, when you get down to answering it, we can probably chuck this in the questions box. Is that right? Yes, let's hope that's
Yes. My other question for you, John Mark,
Yes.
is would you like me to share this document with everyone who's watching or to the panelists and host, which is where it went the first time?
Okay, yes, please. I thought I sent it to everyone, but yes, please, that'd be fantastic if you could share it with the attendees, everyone possible. And please download this document or make a copy of this document so that you can use it yourself, use it in the future for whatever you like, whatever project you have, whatever business project you have. Yeah. And so, okay, back to the task. So the first thing I want you to do is get the time frame. What's a time frame that really makes sense to you? 5 years, it could be 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, whatever makes the most sense. Lot of clients pick 20, 25, or 30 because entrepreneurs tend to like round numbers. But pick a time frame and then decide what your big goal is. So you can choose anything, but it's got to be one thing. So some of you want to grow, some of you want to conquer the world. And so I'd urge you to write it down in the most specific way you can possibly can. Saying perhaps there's a revenue amount you want to make in your business, or a revenue amount you want to have 5 to 30 years from now. Maybe you have multiple locations. Maybe it's a number of employees you want to have. However you want to express that growth, just be specific. So some of you want to increase the profitability of your business. Some of you want to live a better life and have more peace and feel like things are more stable and predictable. Whatever it is, try and express that as specifically as you can. So there's no hard and fast rules. I just want you to write down your big business goal. So just take 2 minutes. So when you're ready, you can put it in the chat. What are some of your big goals? So we've got a good one here. By 2030, I will have helped 20,000 people and organizations get unstuck, find their purpose, and reach their potential. Nice. Do we have any more? Do we have the possibility to see everyone's 10-year target?
I can share them with you as they appear in the chat.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I also appreciated the examples that Sunit posted, identifying the distribution targets, the competition targets, and the reputation target. Would you like me to read those?
Yes, Cindy, do you want to read some of the examples?
Yeah, absolutely. So some examples that we talk about in the US. So Coca-Cola, one that most of us can relate to, had a goal of having a Coke within reach of every human on the planet. That actually inspired the creation of vending machines, right? And so they did it. And so we want it to be big and bold. If you're, if you have a competition focused target, right now you may be number 2 or 4 in your market, you pick a number, pick a position that you would like to be at. Reputation, you want a certain number of people to know you or refer you. And you can see that's what inspired mine, which is by 2030, my purpose statement, my core purpose is to help people get unstuck, find their purpose, and reach their potential. And what the 10-year target helps me do is put a number to that. So I want to help 25,000 either people or organizations achieve that goal. And we have a great question from Brian Cassidy, which I think is relevant for the group. So Brian, I'd like to share it, which is, hey, this is an excellent, simple, like high-level exercise. What we're actually going to do, John Mark is taking the vision, which is the V part, and that is really helping us dream big and aim high. And then in the last 15 minutes, we'll flip it and bring it down into actionable steps in the traction side of things. So you're ahead of us, and that's a great question. So we will be going in that direction.
So my target actually is also numerical. So it's help 100 companies by helping them implement EOS by 2032. So if there's no more, should we move on? Are there any more in the chat, Monica?
I don't see any more in the chat at this time.
All
If
right,
they
so
pop up, I will let you know.
Well, I hope everyone's got a good idea of what this is about with our examples. So we'll move on. That's the 10-year target. Now we need to have a look at the marketing strategy. And so the marketing strategy is just simply designed to get you all on the same page with who you should talk to and what you should say to get the biggest return on your investment in precious sales and marketing energy. And so there are 4 parts to marketing strategy: target market, 3 uniques, proven process, and your guarantee. And so target market is getting you to agree on the ideal prospect, the demographic, geographic, psychographic profile of the kinds of people or companies you need to be laser focused on proactively selling to. And once that's clear, the rest of the marketing strategy is simply your message to those ideal prospects. So 3 uniques are just 3 differentiating characteristics. The 3 things about your organization that make you different, better than the competition, that set you apart. And then the proven process is a 1-page visual illustration of how you take care of clients from the moment they start thinking about working with you to the moment you become trusted partners of theirs. And then the guarantee is just a pledge or promise to reduce that fear of adoption, that eliminates objections that you might face in the sales or marketing process. And so those are the 4 components that make up the marketing strategy. And what we find when you're 100% with all your core values, your core focus, and your 10-year target and your marketing strategy, you know who you are at your core with your core values. You know what you love to do and are best at with your core focus. And you know where you're going long term with your 10-year target. And you know how you're going to get there with your marketing strategy. So that's the vision side of the Vision Traction Organizer. Any questions?
Hey, John Mark, can I ask, just given the dynamic of the questions in Q&A, would you be able to continue to quarterback the presentation while I go through the traction side?
Sure.
Awesome. Oh, please, now to your questions to the vision side, everyone.
Any questions so far?
So questions about the vision side. One question is, are there any listed in the 3 uniques? Are there any uniques that as you're working with clients, you say, maybe not that one? Are there unique to avoid?
So the three uniques, this is what you are, it's what differentiates you, it's what you're best at. But one sort of clarification perhaps that might help to answer the question is that they don't each have to be unique. So you don't have to have one that's completely unique, right? It's the combination of all three that makes you unique. So that's the idea here. I hope that.
Yeah, John, I think that's, John Mark, that's beautifully put. It's the fact that you have three variables when combined creates this unique perspective. And then to build on that, this is a hard exercise, John Mark, wouldn't you agree? Like doing this. And so the premise of this is get it as good as you can get it and make progress. Get it 80% of the way there, be willing to come back and revisit it. But 80% direction is better than 20% direction or no direction at all. And I think that is a start. So as facilitators, we will often say, hey, you know what? Like that may not be your forever uniques, but those are great for now. And there is a distinction between forever and for now that you should accept for progress.
Absolutely. Well put. Well put. Any others before we move on? Cool. So we can move to the 3-year picture. Over to you, Sunit.
Thanks, bud. We're still effectively on the vision part of the slide, but there's 8 questions. So John Mark took the first 4. I'll take the next 4. And this is the bridge. So once you've done the vision and you've done those first, sort of 4 questions, we then crystallize the vision, bring it down to the ground, and we start talking in terms of the 3-year picture. And that's a very literal term. This is not a complicated 3 to 5 year strategic planning process. What we're trying to do is get every member of your team to crystallize and visualize. That's why we call it a picture. We want you to envision what the company needs to be successful and what it needs to look like 3 short years from now. And so when everybody can see that picture, right, not just numbers or words on a page, but visualize it, your ability to achieve that becomes higher, right? A picture's worth 1,000 words. And so you'll see, we do the same measurables that we have done. We do revenue, we look at profit. Measurables are simply metrics, numbers that you can actually hold yourself accountable to. And then it's, what does it look like? Like, what are we going to have to do to take that picture from an outline and a sketch into a high fidelity picture, what it's going to look like? And the beautiful part of having a 3-year picture is 2 things happen. First, everybody is looking at the same picture. Everybody seems the same visual. And as a result of that, the chances that you're going to achieve it, so much stronger. And the second is that builds a bridge from this super high level aspirational dream of a 10-year target down to the 1-year plan. Perfect timing, John Mark. And now you flip that document over. If you printed it out, it's 2 sides. Vision on one side, traction on the other side. And someone said it in the chat. It's the beauty of this is the simplicity. These are all words we are used to. Strategic planning shouldn't be something that is hard to reach or up on a pedestal. So one of the things that Gino Wickman did with EOS is try to make this accessible to everybody, because most of the people that use this tend to be people who are passionate and subject matter experts about the work they're doing. They're not necessarily in love with administrating their business, right? They want to deliver their service or product. So when we get to the 1-year plan, you'll see the same predictions here. So 3 years, now we're doing it the 1 year. And we're saying, okay, what is the revenue? What is the profit? What are the measurables? What are the things we're going to measure? And what are we going to achieve this year? Or frankly, given it's November, maybe you push it out to what are we going to achieve at the end of 2025? That's going to start laddering up to helping us achieve our vision. And then critical, you'll see a list of 7. And actually, what I would encourage you to do is 3. We're going to set 3 goals. You're not going to set 23, because when everything is important, nothing is important. And one of the things we talk about a lot is less is more at EOS. And so when you go through this exercise, the 1-year plan, you set your top 3 priorities that ladder up and connect to your 3-year picture, that connect to your 10-year target, that was informed by your core vision, core values, and marketing strategy. And what happens is it's like going to a chiropractor and your entire business has snapped into alignment where you see the through line all the way through the work you're doing. And then this goes to Brian, one of the questions you asked, which is from True North and Brian Cassidy has a book called True North. But from that perspective of the 10-year target down to, okay, how do I operationalize this? And that takes us to what we call quarterly rocks. What is a quarterly rock, right? It's informed by, if you remember, there's this popular adage, and John Mark, if you can skip to the rocks, it's informed by there's this story that used to go around of a professor standing at the front of a classroom who would have rocks, pebbles, sand, and water. And he would encourage his students to fill the glass jar and get everything inside of it. And so people would start with the sand, then the water, and by the time you did the little things, you had no room for the big things. But if you started with the big things, then the smaller things could fall in place. And that's where this originated from, is what are your rocks? And similarly, pick the 3 to 7 priorities, 90-day business priorities. And 90 days is really important. It's all about quarter to quarter, right? So everyone is on the same page. Everybody knows that we set 90-day priorities, and we effectively create what EOS calls a 90-day world. So every quarter, every 90 days, you have predicting your revenue, profit, and measurables, identifying your 3 priorities. The reason we say 7 is because you do this as a team for the company first, and then everybody does it for themselves, and then you cascade it down to the team. And so it just creates discipline, focus, and accountability. So we are executing on our vision every 90 days. And this was another place that John Mark and I thought we would stop and say, look, for the folks who have joined us here today, hopefully you had a few minutes to just stop and think about that 10-year big picture dream. Pick your head up a little bit, your target. And the next thing we wanted to do was actually say, hey, why don't you identify the 3 most important things you could do through the end of the year to start making progress against that 10-year target? So we'd like to pause for a minute or two, a couple minutes. Why don't you write down examples of what those top 3 rocks would be? These are tactical things. They usually fill space, so it's not something you can do in a day. It's something you have to do consistently over the course of a quarter. It's heavy. It's a rock. It's not a pebble. And I think that is it.
As we're thinking through this as a tool, I also want to be mindful of the time and
Sure.
let you know we're about 15
3:45.
minutes. Yeah.
Perfect.
Time for some questions.
Sounds great. I see a comment from Khalid Alwell. I'm not sure I understand the context of the comment, but I'd be happy to speak after if that would be helpful. And we were told that we had until 4 o'clock Eastern, but if we have to end now, we are basically at the end.
No, we're good. You can please continue.
Yeah.
We can take until 4 o'clock. I just wanted to give you the time so that we're mindful of the 4 o'clock warning. Although I know we had to we started a few minutes late, so
that's okay.
This is great.
We're good. The only thing I wanted to make sure is we connect the dots and gave people the opportunity to pick their heads up and think big, and then put their heads down and think about something operationally. And so I hope folks have identified 3 rocks and seen, as we said at the beginning, the power of this tool. It's a printout. It's 2 pages. And it's not that these are things that people don't already know, but the greatest gap and the greatest failure of humanity exists between the space of what we know and the space of what we do. And so what we've learned is the back to basics is about, let's put people in position and structure to do the things they know, but don't have space for. And with that, the last part is issues. And the beauty of the issues is that there is actually a weekly cadence around managing through this entire process. And so that's something that we are happy to speak to and talk about. But at a high level, we thought this would, we weren't 100% sure who was going to be on the call and joining us. We didn't know if it was going to be leaders. We didn't know if it was going to be operators. We didn't know if it was going to be frontline people or a mix. And so, again, the power of this tool is it's applicable to anyone, professionally, personally, regardless of your context in the organization. And we hope you found it helpful. John Mark, is there anything you'd want to sort of close with?
No, that's fine. That's great. Any questions once again about any of that?
Excellent. So we'll put it out to everyone who's watching and participating around the world for questions, and I will monitor the chat to make sure that we have it. Thank you, Brian, for your comment. You very much enjoyed it and liked your presentation. I would like to ask a couple of questions while we're waiting for folks online to post. My question is, larger organizations, would you recommend that they do this at the division level in addition to the larger organizational vision?
I'm happy to start with that one, John Mark, if it's helpful. It always should start from the top. Otherwise, you're creating fragmentation and entropy, effectively. You're facilitating entropy. I think when we start, we tend to go at the highest levels of the organization and start with the founder, the leadership team, the executive team. And then when that is set, if the core values can cascade, it is all about continuously cascading this down, right? So I have been a part of facilitating this with organizations as many as 4,000 people. But the key is, do you get the executive team bought in? And it's not the board. It's about that leadership team first. Then it can go up to board facilitation, down to leadership team management, down to frontline people. But the benefit is when you have those core values, the core focus, the ICP, the 10-year target, everybody can then start drawing a straight line between their work and what they're doing, whether it's a business unit, a division, they can all start connecting up. So you can cascade down, but you should set this at the very top of the organization.
Thank you. Sunny, you had asked or made the comment about weekly updates. Could you expand and share a little bit more of that and how frequently this should be revisited, shared, and how to keep it top of mind among people in the organization?
Yeah, and John Mark has some good experience with this, so I'll take a quick cut at it. And then he's actually in the throes of some of this with his busy schedule right now. But there is a pretty prescriptive process around this. So there is a level 10, L10 meeting agenda. And the L10 comes from the fact that we want the meeting to be so successful and so productive that everybody rates it a 10 out of 10. And so there is a framework. So you primarily focus on rocks and issues. You spend every week as a leadership team 90 minutes just focused on issues. Then quarterly you revisit the rocks, and annually you revisit the plan, and you just sort of have this nice flywheel, and you pre-book that stuff in advance for a year. So there's no escaping, there's no hiding. Jean Marc, what would you say?
That's right. In the weekly meeting, we talk about adding a little bit of weekly accountability. We run a to-do list as well, because when we solve issues, out of those issues become action steps. And action steps we can put into two categories. Either they are 90-day action steps, which we call ROCs, 90-day priorities, or they are 1 week to-dos. And so what happens is on these weekly meetings, you'll get a list of to-dos from the previous meeting, and we'll check as part of that meeting, have you done your to-dos from the previous meeting? So you're really getting that weekly accountability, as well as that 90-day accountability with the ROCs. Does that make sense?
Indeed. What are the primary obstacles that you faced in getting people to adapt and adopt this process?
So
what are the challenges? You walk into the room with this sheet of paper and they say, no way. Why?
Look, so for us, it's really, really key that the leaders that we implement EOS with have this growth-oriented mindset, right? That's on the one hand. And it's also important that they're open-minded. They're ready to be open and honest with each other, with themselves as well, to be a little bit vulnerable. So those are the biggest obstacles. When you get big egos in the room and big people who aren't ready to let go of those egos. That's the biggest problem, really, and the biggest obstacle that I see. What do you reckon, Sunny?
I think, similar, I think John Mark has said it. And I think the other side of it is sometimes the fact that it's so simple makes people skeptical. And so, it is no different than taking your personal relationship, into therapy. If you want it to succeed and you believe in it, it will. If you are skeptical and cynical, it won't. And so there's no push for us. We tend to introduce it and we ask people to opt in. And the folks that opt in, again, 275,000 companies are doing it in a pretty transformational way. But the key is, if you have to convince people and overcome cynicism and skepticism at the outset, you'll be fighting that the whole way through. And so we just try and present purely, be aggressively helpful, be always available. And if folks opt in, then that's when it works best.
A lot of this conference has circled around the concept of AI and large language models, in particular, generative. At what point do you feel it's appropriate or possible to use AI for part of this, or is that not useful in this situation at all?
So we pride ourselves on, this is the human side. So, when you think of AI as someone who's implemented and worked with it for, going on a decade, I think it does, you've seen some comments even from the last presentation, what it can elevate. The benefit to this is that this is the human work, right? This is where humans can and should spend their time, which is directing, managing, visioning. And then the fact that you can do this, AI enabled from a reporting standpoint, from a evidence standpoint, from a support standpoint, the amount of time spent, supporting this sort of process is less of an administrative burden if you co-pilot with AI in the appropriate way. And the other side of this is I don't see AI as just taking away the busy work. I use AI in my day-to-day as a professor, as a coach, as an operator. Anytime I hit a moment of low energy where I feel myself a bit stuck, I just turn to the Gen AI around me to help me regain momentum. So you can interject it anywhere in here, but a lot of this work is the best human work that we can do. It's the elevated work we can do. And so I see it as a complement and a partner, but we're a bit of ways away from where it would take over this process. That's my 2 cents. That's not an EOS party line. We've never been asked that question before. So
what's interesting is you can ask any large language model, well, not any, ChatGPT specifically, what to do in any certain situation as far as EOS is concerned, and you'll get the right answer. But as I mentioned when we started with that tool, the magic isn't in the answers, it's in aligning around the answers. It's in aligning a team around one specific answer that they've come up with together. So that's kind of that angle on it.
Thank you so much. Well, I appreciate the insight that you've shared. I can see how this can be a tool for nonprofits and for-profit businesses, corporations, and including our own at a university. We are in the throes of a strategic planning process now, and so it's likely something that I can share with them and hopefully reach out to you as a resource. I appreciate you sharing. Thank you so much. Let's see.
Thank you so much for having us, and Dr. Nadi as well. Thank you for facilitating. Monica, thank you for having us on. We appreciate it.
Great thanks for both of you. You are our partner since we're starting from 2022. You are part of our conference. I need to conclude the powerful of your strategy, what I like it, and I invite to every year to let all other knowing about EOS. The things is EOS, it's not EOS is applicable for the startup with no high budget. He cannot buy any platform. Okay, EOS based on manual, some tools, okay, spreadsheets or some tools available freely. This is what we reflect the powerful things for EOS in United States and all over the world. because the entrepreneurs or the startup, he cannot invest too much to buying, let's say, Fuva platform because supporting by AI, and I need